Rain fell like glass beads shattering against the pavement. The city's heartbeat echoed in the distance. Hurried footsteps, blaring horns, and somewhere between them, a faint cry for help. Lily, her clothes soaked and torn from the day's struggle, turned her head sharply. A young boy in a wheelchair had slipped toward the edge of the flooded street, his small hands flailing helplessly as a car's headlights drew near. Without a thought, she ran. The splash of her shoes, the burn in her lungs, the rush of fear, it all blurred into one motion. She dove forward, pushing the wheelchair back to safety just as the tires screamed past. The world went still. Water rippled around them. The boy's terrified eyes met hers. Wide, green, innocent. "Are you okay?" she panted, brushing mud from his arm. He nodded, trembling. Blood ran down Lily's leg where the car's mirror had grazed her, but she didn't care. He was alive. She smiled faintly, trying to calm his sobs. Moments later, a man in an expensive suit stormed through the rain, his voice sharp as a blade. "What happened to my son?" His eyes flicked from the trembling boy to Lily's dirt-stained face, and what came next froze everyone who watched. "Before we dive deeper, tell me, where in the world are you watching from? It amazes me how far a single story can travel. Drop your city. Let's see how wide kindness still spreads." Lily staggered back as the man grabbed her by the arm. "What did you do to him?" His voice was thunder, his rage blinding. The boy reached out. "Dad, no. She saved me." But the words were lost in the storm. The man's palm struck across her cheek, a sound that cut through the rain like a whip. The world went silent again. For a moment, Lily didn't move. The sting spread through her skin, hot and humiliating. Tears welled, but she refused to let them fall. I saved him," she whispered. The man froze, hand still raised. The boy's sobs broke through the air, and realization crept into the billionaire's face like a shadow. She turned away before he could speak, limping down the wet street, clutching her arm. People had stopped, watching from sidewalks and car windows. No one stepped forward. The boy's voice echoed after her, faint and broken, "Thank you." She didn't look back. The night swallowed Lily as she disappeared into the narrow, dimly lit streets. Rainwater traced streaks down her bruised cheek, mingling with quiet tears she refused to admit were there. Her hands trembled, not from pain, but from the weight of humiliation. She had done something good, something right. And still, it ended like this. Her small apartment waited for her at the edge of the city, tucked between two cracked walls where the rent was low and the walls whispered the secrets of broken dreams. When she finally pushed open the door, the smell of damp clothes and old paint greeted her. She sank to the floor, exhausted. Her knee throbbed where the car had clipped her, but the ache in her chest was worse, heavier, deeper, impossible to touch. She replayed the slap in her mind over and over, the disbelief in the boy's eyes, the anger in the man's face, the way kindness could turn into punishment in a heartbeat. She whispered to herself, "Why does it always happen like this?" Her voice cracked, barely above a whisper. The next morning, the city woke up bright and cold, pretending nothing had happened. Lily limped to the bakery where she worked, sweeping floors before sunrise. The owner, Mrs. Hanley, noticed the bruise on her cheek. "Good heavens, child, what happened to you?" "Just a small accident," Lily said softly, forcing a smile. She always forced it, because kindness, she'd learned, wasn't supposed to demand attention. It was supposed to survive quietly. Mrs. Hanley sighed. "You've got the kind of heart that gets hurt easily. But don't let the world take that away. You hear?" Lily nodded, though her eyes told a different story. Across town, in a mansion guarded by silence and marble, billionaire Michael Carrington sat at his breakfast table, the echo of last night haunting him. His son, Ethan, hadn't spoken since they returned. The boy's eyes had changed, softer somehow, but sad. "Dad," Ethan said finally, voice low, "she wasn't hurting me. She saved me." Michael froze, coffee cup midair. "What?" "She saved me," Ethan repeated, tears slipping down his face. "You hit her for no reason. She's hurt because of me. The cup slipped from Michael's hand and shattered on the floor. The sound jolted something inside him. Shame, realization, regret. He stood abruptly. Find her, he barked at his assistant, but his voice trembled. Find that girl. I need to make this right. But the assistant hesitated. Sir, we don't even know her name. Michael clenched his fists. For the first time in years, he felt powerless. Meanwhile, Lily spent the afternoon kneading dough in silence. Her co-workers chatted, laughed, planned their weekends. She moved like a ghost among them, unnoticed except for the faint limp. Every time she brushed flour from her hands, she thought of the boy's green eyes, the way he'd said thank you. It had been sincere, pure. Maybe that was enough. By evening, she took her leftover bread and walked home through the alleyway where stray cats waited. She broke off small pieces, tossing them gently to the hungry creatures. Their mews echoed softly in the cold air. At least you're grateful, she whispered with a sad smile. Behind her, an unfamiliar car slowed to a stop. If you were there in that moment, what would you have done? Be honest. Comment your answer below. And if words fail you, just hit like to prove that compassion still matters. Miss, a voice called out. Lily turned, startled. A man in a black suit stepped out of the sleek car, holding an umbrella. You're Lily, right? She froze. Who's asking? He bowed slightly. Mr. Carrington sent me. He wishes to speak with you. Lily's stomach twisted. I don't think I have anything to say to him. Please, the man said, lowering his voice. He wants to apologize. The word apologize felt foreign, almost absurd. Still, something inside her softened, not out of forgiveness, but curiosity. Could someone like him even mean it? Reluctantly, she followed. The car smelled of leather and money, things she'd never touch. Her reflection in the window looked smaller than usual, fragile, tired. When the gates opened, her heart pounded. The mansion loomed ahead, lit with warm gold light. It didn't feel like a home. It felt like a cage wrapped in beauty. Inside, Michael Carrington stood by the fireplace, his expression unreadable. When he saw her, he straightened, guilt shadowing his sharp features. Lily, he began, his voice quieter than she expected. I don't expect you to forgive me. But please, let me thank you properly. She met his eyes, the same eyes that had burned with anger the night before. You already did, she said bitterly, touching her cheek. His shoulders sank. Ethan appeared at the top of the stairs, his wheelchair gliding silently down the ramp. Dad, he whispered. Please don't make it worse. Michael knelt beside his son. I won't. I promise. He turned back to Lily. I know I can't erase what I did, but at least let me help you. Anything you need, medical care, money. She cut him off. You think money fixes everything. The room went quiet except for the crackle of the fire. Lily's voice trembled, but her gaze stayed firm. Sometimes, the only thing people like me want is respect. That's all. Michael lowered his head, words failing him for the first time in years. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance, as if the storm itself had returned to listen. And somewhere in that silence, Ethan whispered, Dad, maybe she can help us too. Michael looked up, confused, but the boy's eyes held something else now. Not fear. Not anger. Something closer to faith. The story was only beginning to unfold. Michael followed Ethan's gaze, unsure what the boy meant. The silence stretched between them, heavy and fragile. Lily stood still, hands clasped before her, ready to leave if this turned into another humiliation. Ethan wheeled forward, his small hands gripping the chair's sides tightly. Dad, she can help us. Not with money. With something else. Michael frowned. Ethan, what are you talking about? The boy's lips trembled, but his voice was steady. You're always busy. Always angry. You don't see people anymore. She saw me. Really saw me. Lily's throat tightened. She wanted to say something comforting but didn't know if she should. Instead, she looked away, her eyes drifting to the enormous painting on the wall. A woman smiling softly, holding a child in her arms. "Your wife?" she asked quietly. Michael turned toward it. His voice cracked for the first time. "Yes. Her name was Grace." Ethan's eyes filled with tears. "She died 3 years ago. Car accident. I was in the car too." Lily's breath caught. Suddenly, the anger, the fear, everything made sense. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Michael nodded slowly, pain flickering through his face. "Since then, I've built walls. Around myself. Around him. I thought keeping him safe meant keeping everyone else out." Lily stepped closer, hesitant but sincere. "Sometimes safety isn't about walls. It's about trust." Her words hung in the air, soft yet powerful. Ethan's eyes brightened just a little, as if those simple words had cracked something open inside his father's heart. Michael's gaze softened. "You sound like Grace. She used to say things like that." Lily smiled faintly. "Then maybe she sent me to remind you." For a moment, no one spoke. The fireplace popped, and the rain outside began again, gentler this time, like the world was sighing in relief. Ethan turned his chair toward her. "Will you stay for dinner?" he asked. Lily hesitated. She didn't belong here, not among chandeliers and velvet chairs. But the boy's hopeful eyes reminded her of something pure, something she'd almost forgotten, being needed. "All right," she said softly. The dining room shimmered with warm light. The table stretched long and elegant, though only 3 plates were set. Michael's housekeeper, Anna, moved quietly, glancing curiously at the stranger sitting beside her employer. Lily ate carefully, her manners simple but graceful. She'd learned to be humble in rooms where people judged by silence. Ethan chatted happily, telling her about his favorite books and the robotic car he was trying to build for school. Michael watched them both, an ache building behind his ribs. For the first time in years, laughter filled this room again. After dinner, Ethan showed her his small workshop, a corner of the house filled with wires, motors, and sketches. Lily's eyes widened. "You did all this?" He nodded shyly. "Mom used to help me, but after she was gone, Dad hired teachers. None of them stayed." She smiled, kneeling beside him. "Maybe they didn't see what she saw, but I think you're brilliant." Ethan blushed, his grin lighting up the room. From the doorway, Michael watched, humbled by the strange, quiet magic unfolding before him. 4 years, his mansion had been filled with noise, business calls, meetings, demands. Tonight, for the first time, it was filled with life. He walked in, speaking softly. "Lily, thank you for being kind to him." She turned, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "He just needed someone to listen." Michael hesitated, then said, "So do I." The words surprised even him. But in that moment, he meant them. Have you ever had someone help you when no one else would? Write yes and tell me their name. Maybe gratitude can travel further than we think. Later that night, as she prepared to leave, Ethan begged her to stay a little longer. "Please, just till tomorrow. Dad never talks like this. You changed something." She laughed softly. "One day won't change much." Michael stepped forward. "It already has." His tone was gentle, stripped of all arrogance. "You said respect is what people like you want. But I think it's what all of us need." Lily felt her chest tighten. The sincerity in his voice broke the distance she'd built. "Maybe," she whispered, "but respect isn't given. It's shown." He nodded slowly. "Then let me show it." He offered to drive her home, and though she wanted to refuse, something about the quiet determination in his eyes made her agree. The ride back was silent at first, just the hum of the engine and the soft tapping of rain against the window. Then Michael spoke. "I grew up poor too, you know. I worked hard, built everything I have. But somewhere along the way, I forgot why I started." Lily glanced at him. "Then maybe meeting me was your reminder." He smiled faintly, a real smile this time, fragile but genuine. When they reached her street, She stepped out and turned back. Tell Ethan to keep building. The world needs dreamers like him. I will, he said. For a moment, their eyes met, two lives from different worlds, sharing the same quiet truth. Pain changes people, but kindness saves them. Michael drove away, heart heavier yet lighter all at once. Lily watched until his car disappeared into the night, unaware that this encounter was only the beginning of something neither of them expected, redemption. The next morning, sunlight slipped through Lily's torn curtains, painting golden lines across her small room. She woke to the sound of birds tapping at the window, a rare comfort in her world. Her leg ached, but her heart felt lighter. Something about last night had stirred hope again, the kind that doesn't roar, but hums quietly under your ribs. When she reached the bakery, Mrs. Hanley smiled. You look different today, dear. Like someone finally saw you. Lily laughed softly, tying her apron. Maybe someone did. She didn't know that across the city, in a room full of marble and silence, Ethan Carrington was writing her name in bold letters across a piece of cardboard. Thank you, Lily. He taped it above his desk, right next to a photograph of his mother. Michael walked in, startled. You really like her, huh? She listens, Ethan said simply. Mom used to say listening is love. Michael's chest tightened. She was right. That day, Michael cancelled meetings for the first time in years. He drove to the bakery, waiting in his car until Lily's shift ended. When she stepped outside, wiping flour from her hands, she spotted him. The billionaire from last night, leaning awkwardly against his expensive car like a man out of place. You again? She teased, a small smile tugging at her lips. He nodded, hesitant. I was wondering if you'd help me with something. Help you? He looked embarrassed, scratching his neck. With Ethan. He opens up when you're around. I don't know how to talk to him anymore. Lily hesitated. I'm not a therapist. I know, but maybe you're what he needs, what we both need. Something in his voice made her pause. The arrogance was gone. In its place stood a father desperate to reconnect. She sighed softly. All right, but only because of Ethan. A flicker of relief crossed his face. Thank you. That afternoon, she returned to the mansion. Ethan's smile was instant and radiant. You came back. She laughed. You sound surprised. I prayed you would, he said, his innocence disarming. They spent the day in the garden, Ethan showing her the half-finished robot he'd built. Its metal arms were crooked, but it waved clumsily when powered on. Lily clapped and laughed with real joy, the kind that heals scars. Michael watched from the terrace, heart swelling. Each laugh, each moment, chipped away at the loneliness that had built inside their walls. Later, Ethan insisted they bake cookies, something his mom used to do. The kitchen filled with sugar, warmth, and laughter. Michael joined in awkwardly, dusting flour across his expensive shirt, making both of them laugh harder. For a moment, it felt like a family again. But the fragile peace broke when a voice echoed from the doorway. Sir, your board meeting starts in 15 minutes, his assistant reminded him. Michael froze. Two worlds collided, the empire he built, and the simple happiness he'd forgotten. Ethan's face fell. You have to go, don't you? Michael looked between them, his son's pleading eyes and Lily's quiet understanding, and took a deep breath. No, he said finally. Not today. The assistant blinked. Sir. You heard me. Lily's eyes widened. You're skipping a board meeting. For us. For him, Michael said, resting a hand on Ethan's shoulder. For what really matters. Ethan smiled, tears welling up. The afternoon passed with stories, jokes, and quiet understanding. For the first time, the mansion felt alive, filled with laughter that echoed through every room. When Lily prepared to leave that evening, Michael stopped her at the door. You've done more for us than you know, he said softly. Let me drive you home. She hesitated. It's all right. I can take the bus. I insist. They drove in silence for a while, the city lights painting gold streaks across the windshield. Then, without looking at her, Michael said, "You made me see what I'd forgotten. That kindness isn't weakness, it's strength." Lily turned to him, her eyes warm. "And strength isn't money. It's admitting when you're wrong." He smiled faintly. "Then I guess I'm finally strong." They both laughed softly, the kind of laughter that mends broken things. When he dropped her off, she waved goodbye. But as the car pulled away, a black van across the street caught her eye. Two men sat inside, watching. She frowned but shook it off. Probably just her imagination. Except it wasn't. "Now it's your turn. Share one small good thing you did recently. Write it below so others remember that humanity still lives. Your story might light someone's path tonight." 2 days later, the news spread. Carrington Enterprises was under fire for fraud allegations. Reporters swarmed the gates. Investors panicked. Lily watched from the bakery's tiny TV, stunned. Michael's face filled the screen, serious, determined. "I take full responsibility," he said. "But my focus is my family. My son." Mrs. Hanley clucked her tongue. "Even the rich have storms, dear." That evening, as she walked home, a car screeched to a stop beside her. It wasn't Michael's. 2 men stepped out, the same from before. "Miss Lily," one said, "we need you to come with us." She stepped back, alarmed. "Why?" "It's about Mr. Carrington." The second man flashed a badge. "We need to ask questions about last week's incident." Confused and frightened, Lily nodded slowly. "All right." They opened the door, and everything went black. When Lily opened her eyes, the world was a blur of cold light and shadows. Her wrists ached. They were tied. The air smelled of dust and gasoline. Panic shot through her chest like lightning. "Hello?" she called out, her voice trembling. No answer, just the hum of a distant engine. Her memories came crashing back. The men, the car, their lies. Fear clawed at her throat. She struggled against the ropes, but they cut deeper into her skin. The warehouse around her was empty, except for a faint sound of footsteps approaching. 2 men entered, faces hidden beneath caps. "She's awake," one muttered. Lily's voice cracked. "What do you want?" "I didn't do anything." The taller man sneered. "That billionaire you've been hanging around with, Carrington. He's in deep trouble. We just need something from you. A statement, or maybe a trade." "A trade?" "Yeah." He smirked. "You for his silence." Her stomach twisted. "You think he'd trade anyone for money?" The man laughed darkly. "Everyone has a price." Lily's eyes burned with fury. "Then you've never met someone who doesn't." He raised his hand threateningly, but before he could move, the sound of a car screeched outside. Tires on gravel. Voices shouting. Then, footsteps, fast and desperate. The warehouse door burst open. Michael stood there, rain-soaked and furious. "Let her go." The men froze. One reached for his pocket, but Michael's security team stormed in seconds later, disarming them. The chaos erupted, shouts, crashes, and the dull thud of fists meeting bone. Lily blinked through tears as Michael rushed to her side, cutting the ropes. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head weakly. "You came." He looked at her, breathless. "Of course I did." When the police arrived minutes later, the kidnappers were dragged away. Michael's hands still trembled as he led her outside. Rain fell softly again, as if the world had been holding its breath until now. In the flashing lights of the patrol cars, Lily finally asked, "How did you find me?" "Ethan," he said, voice rough. "He saw the van on our security cameras. He wouldn't stop crying until I went after you myself." Her lips parted in shock. "Ethan saved me." Michael nodded. "Seems he's got more courage than I ever did." A weak smile touched her lips. Like father, like son. Michael met her gaze, guilt and gratitude swirling behind his eyes. "I don't deserve that comparison. I failed you both once." She placed a hand on his arm. Then don't fail again. He exhaled slowly, not just from exhaustion, but release. Hours later, back at the mansion, Ethan waited anxiously by the window. The moment he saw them, he wheeled forward so fast that Michael barely caught him. "You're safe," he cried, grabbing Lily's hand. "I'm okay," she said, smiling through exhaustion. "You're my little hero." Ethan grinned, cheeks wet with tears. "I just did what you would have done." Her heart swelled. Michael looked between them, emotion thick in his throat. "You've changed my son, Lily, and you've changed me." She shook her head softly. "I didn't change you. I just reminded you of who you already were." For a moment, the three of them sat there in silence, a strange little family bound not by blood, but by grace. The doctor arrived to treat Lily's bruises. Michael refused to leave her side. When she finally drifted into sleep, he stood by the window, staring at the storm outside. The night felt endless, but for the first time, it didn't feel empty. He thought about the first time he saw her, drenched, trembling, saving his son. And the last, broken, yet unafraid. That night, something inside him shifted completely. If that moment hit you hard, leave a red heart hash. Sometimes one little symbol says what our hearts can't. The next morning brought headlines that changed everything. Carrington exposes corporate corruption in his own company, turns whistleblower. Michael had spent the night working with the police, turning over every document, every secret ledger his corrupt board members had hidden. His empire trembled, but his conscience finally stood tall. Reporters swarmed outside the mansion gates, but Michael ignored them all. His only focus was Ethan and Lily, who now sat in the sunlit garden, a blanket over her knees. "You're a brave man," she said softly as he joined her. He smiled faintly. "No, just a man who finally met someone braver." Ethan laughed from his chair. "You both saved me, in different ways." Michael turned to him. "No, son. She saved us both." The boy beamed, and for a heartbeat, the world seemed right again. But in the distance, an ambulance siren echoed, faint yet haunting. Lily's face paled suddenly. Her body swayed, and before either could react, she collapsed forward, unconscious. Michael caught her instantly, panic clawing at his throat. "Lily! Lily, stay with me." Ethan screamed her name as paramedics rushed in. The sunlight that had filled the garden moments ago dimmed behind clouds, and the air turned cold. The story had taken another turn, one that none of them saw coming. The ambulance doors slammed shut, and the siren wailed into the cold morning air. Michael's heart pounded in his ears as he gripped Lily's trembling hand. Her face was pale, lips slightly blue. Ethan sat beside her, his small fingers clutching her sleeve, refusing to let go. "Dad, she'll be okay, right?" he whispered, voice breaking. Michael swallowed hard. "She has to be." The ride to the hospital blurred into flashing lights and the echo of his own guilt. The doctor's voice repeated in his mind, "Severe internal bleeding, possible concussion. She's lost too much blood." Every word sliced deeper than the last. When they arrived, doctors rushed Lily into the emergency room. Michael stood frozen in the sterile hallway, unable to breathe. Ethan reached up and took his father's hand. "Pray, Dad. That's what Mom used to do." Michael's chest tightened. "It's been a long time since I prayed." "Then start again," Ethan said softly. He sank into a chair, face buried in his hands. Memories flooded in, his wife's laughter, her final day, the way he'd pushed everyone away since then. And now Lily, the one person who'd reminded him that kindness still existed, was fighting for her life because of him. Hours passed like years. Nurses hurried through the corridors, machines beeped behind thin curtains, and the scent of antiseptic hung heavy in the air. Michael couldn't sit still. Every time the door opened, he stood up, only to be told to wait a little longer. Finally, the doctor approached. "She's stable, but weak. We managed to stop the bleeding, but her body's exhausted. She needs rest and hope." Michael nodded, his throat tight. "Can I see her?" "Only for a few minutes." When he entered the room, the world seemed to slow down. Lily lay motionless under a thin white sheet, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the monitors beside her. Tubes ran across her arms. Her breathing was shallow but steady. He sat beside her and whispered, "You're the strongest person I've ever met. You don't get to leave now, not after everything." Her eyelids fluttered slightly. "Michael?" He leaned closer. "I'm here." Her voice was faint, barely audible. "You should take care of Ethan." "I will. But you're not done yet." She smiled weakly. "You still think money fixes everything, don't you?" He laughed through tears. "Not anymore." Her hand trembled as she reached for his. "Then maybe you've already changed." The monitor beeped softly in rhythm with her slowing breaths. He squeezed her hand gently. "Rest now, Lily. We'll be here when you wake up." Outside the window, the sun broke through the clouds for the first time in days, a fragile beam cutting through the gray. In the waiting room, Ethan sat curled up in his wheelchair, staring at the floor. Michael knelt beside him. "Hey, buddy." Ethan looked up, eyes glassy. "It's my fault, isn't it? If I hadn't been near the road that day." "No," Michael said firmly. "It's not your fault. None of this is. But she got hurt because of me, twice." Michael shook his head. "She got hurt because she's brave. Because she chose to care. That's something we should never feel guilty for." Ethan sniffled. "Do you think she'll forgive you?" Michael paused, his gaze dropping. "I don't know if I deserve it." "Then ask her anyway," Ethan said. "Mom used to say forgiveness isn't about who deserves it. It's about who needs peace." Michael's eyes burned. Out of the mouths of children, the truth always sounded simplest and truest. He looked toward Lily's room and whispered, "Maybe I'll ask her when she wakes up. Be honest. Could you forgive after what they did? Type forgive if you could, or never if it would break you too deeply." That night, Michael didn't leave the hospital. He sat by Lily's bedside, fingers interlaced with hers. The rhythmic hum of machines became the lullaby of his remorse. He thought about the first moment he saw her, how quickly he judged her by her clothes, her poverty, her silence. He remembered the sting of his hand against her cheek and how, somehow, she had still found it in her heart to help his son afterward. "I don't understand you," he whispered. "How can someone like you still care about people like me?" As if in answer, Lily stirred faintly. Her lips parted, her voice soft but clear. "Because anger never healed anyone." Tears rolled down his cheeks. He bowed his head beside her hand, trembling. "Then I'll spend the rest of my life trying to deserve that." Hours passed. The room dimmed to twilight. Ethan had fallen asleep in the chair beside her, clutching a small folded drawing, a picture he'd made of the three of them standing under a bright sun. When Michael looked at it, his throat tightened again. Maybe, somehow, this broken collection of hearts was becoming something whole. He brushed a strand of hair from Lily's face, his voice a quiet promise. "When you wake up, we'll start again. A life that means something, not one that hides behind money." Outside, the rain began again, but this time it wasn't violent. It was gentle, cleansing, like forgiveness itself. And somewhere between the rhythm of her heartbeat and the soft patter of rain, Lily's lips curved ever so slightly into a smile. The morning arrived quietly, with sunlight filtering through the blinds like threads of gold. The steady beeping of machines continued, but now it felt less like a countdown and more like a rhythm, a sign of endurance. Lily's eyes fluttered open slowly. The first thing she saw was Ethan asleep, his head resting near her arm, a crayon drawing still clutched in his hand. The second thing she saw was Michael, slumped in a chair, exhausted but peaceful, as if guarding her from the world. She smiled faintly, her voice hoarse. "You two look terrible." Michael stirred awake instantly. "Lily." His relief was visible, raw, unfiltered, real. "You're awake. Thank God." Ethan's head shot up. "You're okay." He grinned wide, wiping his eyes with his sleeve. "I told you you'd make it." Lily blinked, trying to steady herself. How long was I out? 2 days, Michael said softly. Longest 2 days of my life. She chuckled weakly. Guess I like to make dramatic entrances. Ethan laughed through a sniffle, his joy contagious. A nurse entered to check her vitals. You've got some stubborn friends here, she said with a smile. Didn't leave your side for a second. Lily's gaze softened as she looked at them. Seems I'm lucky. When the nurse left, Michael leaned forward, his expression turning serious. You scared us. I scared myself, she admitted. But maybe it was meant to happen. Sometimes pain wakes us up to what really matters. Michael nodded slowly, eyes glistening. It woke me up, that's for sure. He hesitated, then said, Lily, I know I've said sorry before, but I need to say it again. Not just for the slap, or the anger, for everything. For being blind to what truly matters. She looked at him, really looked. The man who once stood tall with pride now sat humbled by love and loss. You already made it right, she said softly. You came for me when you didn't have to. He smiled sadly. Maybe I needed saving too. Their silence was gentle, the kind that heals instead of hurts. As the days passed, Lily recovered slowly. Ethan visited every morning before school, bringing small gifts, a flower, a drawing, once even a broken robot part he insisted she could fix. Michael came every evening, sometimes bringing food from the bakery, sometimes just quiet company. It became a rhythm of care, the kind of life none of them expected but all of them needed. One afternoon, as the sun dipped below the city skyline, Michael pushed Ethan's wheelchair beside Lily's bed. The boy was buzzing with excitement. Dad and I made something for you. Lily smiled, curious. Oh? What did you two geniuses cook up? Ethan grinned and handed her a small box wrapped in brown paper. She unwrapped it carefully, revealing a simple silver bracelet engraved with 3 words, Bravery lives here. Her eyes filled instantly. Oh, Ethan, it's beautiful. Michael cleared his throat. Ethan's idea. He said you deserved something that reminds you who you are, just in case you ever forget. She blinked back tears. I don't think I could forget anymore. They laughed softly together, the sound filling the hospital room with warmth that no medicine could match. Later, as Lily sat gazing out the window, she whispered, You know, when I first met you both, I thought our worlds were too different to ever meet. Michael chuckled. Turns out the heart doesn't care about money or walls. She nodded, her voice quiet. No, it only cares about how deeply it can love before breaking. Ethan's voice piped up, innocent yet profound. And how strong it becomes after it heals. Michael and Lily exchanged a look, the kind that speaks volumes without words. If you believe love still wins, comment Amen. Let's fill this section with hope. Maybe someone scrolling right now needs to see it. A week later, Lily was discharged. Michael insisted on bringing her home, not to her old apartment, but to a modest, sunlit guest house on his property. It's quiet, safe, and close enough that Ethan can visit whenever he wants, he said. Lily hesitated. You don't have to. He raised a hand gently. I want to. You've given us back our family, Lily. Let me give you peace. She looked around at the cozy little cottage, soft curtains, blooming flowers outside, a faint scent of fresh bread from the kitchen. It didn't feel like charity. It felt like belonging. Ethan wheeled in, holding a cupcake. Welcome home. Lily laughed, kneeling beside him. You made this. With Dad's help, he said proudly. Michael grinned. Mostly his idea. I just followed orders. They all laughed together. 3 souls once broken by loss, now held together by kindness. That night, as stars spilled across the sky, Lily sat on the porch alone for a while. The air was cool, carrying the sound of crickets and distant laughter from the main house. For the first time in years, she didn't feel small or unseen. She felt whole. She closed her eyes and whispered, Thank you, Grace, as if speaking to someone unseen. Maybe the woman who had once filled that house with love, and whose spirit now seemed to smile upon them. And from the window, Michael watched her, not with guilt, but gratitude. He had everything money could buy, but only now understood what truly made him rich. The moon hung high above the estate, silver and silent, bathing everything in a soft glow. Inside the guest house, the faint crackle of the fireplace filled the air. Lily sat wrapped in a blanket, gazing at the flames as if they held a story only she could read. The bracelet on her wrist shimmered faintly. Bravery lives here. She touched it gently, remembering every moment that had led to this peace she never thought she'd find. A soft knock came at the door. "Come in," she said, voice calm. Michael stepped inside, holding 2 mugs of cocoa. "Couldn't sleep," he admitted. "Figured maybe you couldn't either." She smiled, accepting the mug. "You guessed right." He sat across from her, the firelight flickering across his face. "Ethan's asleep. He made me promise to tell you good night for him." Her smile deepened. "He's a good kid. You've raised him well." Michael chuckled softly. "I'm not sure I can take credit for that. He's been teaching me more than I've been teaching him lately." Lily looked at him for a long moment. "Here's your reflection, Michael. Just purer. You did something right." He met her gaze, and for the first time, there was no weight of guilt, no trace of pride, only quiet sincerity. "Maybe meeting you reminded me of who I wanted to be. For years, I thought power made me strong. But you made me realize compassion does." Lily's eyes softened. "Then I guess we both saved each other." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. The wind brushed against the window, the flames danced lower, and somewhere outside, the faint sound of laughter drifted from the main house, Ethan's laughter, bright and free. Michael spoke again, his voice quieter. "You could have hated me forever, you know." "I could have," she said, "but forgiveness is lighter to carry." He smiled faintly, looking into the fire. "Grace used to say that too." Lily's expression turned thoughtful. "Then maybe she sent me, to finish what she started." He glanced at her, emotion glimmering in his eyes. If she did, she couldn't have chosen better. The warmth between them wasn't romantic. It was deeper, built from shared pain, mutual healing, and a quiet respect forged in the fire of hardship. 2 hearts once cracked now fit perfectly beside each other, not to complete, but to understand. Days turned into weeks, and the mansion no longer echoed with emptiness. Laughter, music, and the aroma of fresh bread filled the air. Ethan regained his confidence. His smile returned like sunshine after a storm. Michael began volunteering at a children's rehabilitation center, inspired by his son, and by Lily. One afternoon, Lily found Ethan outside, showing his new robotic hand prototype to neighborhood kids. They clapped as it waved, and his grin stretched wide. She stood by the garden fence, watching quietly, heart swelling with pride. Michael joined her, hands in his pockets. "He wants to build one for every kid who can't afford it," he said. "Said it's what you'd do." Lily laughed softly. "He's wrong. He'd do it better." Michael turned toward her. "You could stay, you know. Not just in the guest house. Stay with us. As family." Her eyes widened slightly. "Family?" He nodded. "You already are. You just haven't realized it yet." Tears welled in her eyes, not from sadness, but from the kind of joy that humbles you. For years, she had prayed for belonging, for a place where her kindness didn't get her hurt. And now, without ever asking for it, she had found one. She looked toward the horizon, where the sun was setting behind golden clouds. "Maybe this was the plan all along," she whispered. "Pain breaking us open so love could find a way in." Michael smiled, following her gaze. "Maybe it was." If this story moved you, don't scroll past quietly. Tap like, not for me, but for the soul who carried this pain and still stayed kind. One click can be your way of saying, "I felt you." That evening, the 3 of them sat together by the garden fire pit. Lily, Michael, and Ethan. The stars stretched endlessly above, and the warmth of the flames wrapped them in peace. Ethan leaned against Lily's arm, half asleep, murmuring, "Promise you won't ever leave." She brushed his hair gently. "I'm not going anywhere, sweetheart. You're stuck with me now." Michael smiled at the sight, the image of everything he once thought he'd lost now sitting right before him. "I think Grace would have liked you," he said quietly. Lily looked at him, her eyes glimmering in the firelight. "I think she already does." Silence fell between them, not empty, but sacred. The silence that follows healing, the kind that speaks of endings and beginnings at once. The fire cracked softly. The night deepened. And in that stillness, Lily closed her eyes and whispered a prayer, not for herself, but for every soul who had ever been unseen, unheard, or unloved. May they all find their way home too. Moral: true wealth isn't measured by what you own, but by what you give, your time, your empathy, your forgiveness. Sometimes, the poorest heart carries the richest soul, and the kindest hands heal wounds money never could. Speech balloon final note to viewers. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to believe in goodness again. Every view, every comment, every small gesture spreads kindness further. Remember, one act of compassion can rewrite another person's world. #emotional story, #heart-touching story, #forgiveness, #kindness matters, #rich vs poor, #short film, #life lesson, #emotional drama, #faith in humanity, #hope lives here, #true wealth, #story with moral, #inspiring tales, #billionaire story, #moral stories for life.